Why bikers hated Sons of Anarchy. It's easy to sell rebellion. You just need leather, noise, and something to hate. But the real outlaws, they don't sell anything. They ride, they disappear. They live by a code the rest of the world will never understand. In 2008, a TV show tried to capture that world. And for 7 seasons, it ruled television, a Shakespearean tragedy dressed in denim and grease. It had everything: brotherhood, loyalty, death, betrayal. But behind the fiction, real bikers were watching. And what they saw wasn't tribute, it was trespassing. Because Sons of Anarchy didn't just show their lifestyle, it exposed it. It broke the one rule that kept the outlaw world alive: silence. The show that made the world love the outlaw, made the outlaws hate the show. From Hollywood sets to federal raids, from fan patches to real punches thrown. This is the story of how one TV series turned America's most feared brotherhood into a brand, and why the men who inspired it wanted it dead. Chapter 1. The Myth of the Outlaw. It started on the open road, not Hollywood's road, the real one. The kind where the sun bakes the asphalt until it shimmers like chrome, and the only law that matters is how much gas you've got left in the tank. The outlaw biker wasn't born from crime. He was born from boredom, trauma, and freedom. When World War II ended, thousands of young men came home wired on adrenaline and trained for chaos. They didn't want to return to 9-to-5 life or the white picket fences America was selling. They wanted that feeling again: the speed, the danger, the brotherhood. So they built it, not in trenches but in garages. They took old army bikes, chopped them down, made them louder, meaner, and faster. They formed motorcycle clubs, some harmless, others restless. They didn't care about the American dream. They wanted their own. Then came Hollister, 1947, a sleepy California town that got swallowed by a wild weekend rally, beer, burnouts, and bedlam. The media called it the Biker Riot. Life magazine splashed the photo of a drunk rider surrounded by bottles. And just like that, America met its new boogeyman. From that moment, the word outlaw stuck. When the American Motorcycle Association tried to calm the panic, they said 99% of bikers were law-abiding, meaning, of course, that 1% were not. The outlaws took that number and flipped it into a badge of pride. The 1%ers were the rejects, the free men, the wolves of the highway. To join, you didn't fill out a form. You earned it. Through loyalty, violence, and silence, they built a subculture with its own rules, rituals, and hierarchy. President, vice president, sergeant-at-arms, a military structure for men who no longer had a war to fight. But the real war was cultural. To them, society had gone soft. Fake smiles, fake morals, fake freedom. They didn't trust the system, so they made their own. And in their world, loyalty replaced law, and the road replaced religion. To outsiders, they were thugs. To themselves, they were soldiers who just never came home. Hollywood would later turn that defiance into fashion, but in the beginning, it wasn't about rebellion for rebellion's sake. It was survival. It was belonging. Because underneath the leather, the patches, the bravado, was something deeper. Men who couldn't live inside the lines America drew for them. The outlaw biker was never a villain or a hero. He was a symptom of what happens when a country promises freedom and punishes the ones who actually take it. Before Sons of Anarchy turned it into a soap opera of violence and leather, this culture lived in whispers and scars. And for decades it stayed that way, loyal, secretive, unbothered by the outside world, until Hollywood came riding in. Chapter 2. Enter Hollywood. Every subculture starts as a whisper, then Hollywood finds it and turns up the volume. In the 1950s, America was obsessed with order. Perfect lawns, clean haircuts, smiling families on black and white TV. But beneath the surface, there was tension. Millions of restless young men and women staring at a version of life that felt plastic. The biker became the antidote, and Hollywood was watching. In 1953, the Wild One roared onto screens, Marlon Brando in a leather jacket, leaning on his Triumph, smirking at authority. He wasn't a villain, he was the prototype, the anti-hero before the term even existed. When someone asks Brando's character, "What are you rebelling against?" he answers, "What do you got?" That line became scripture. Brando's image rewired America's understanding of rebellion. The biker was no longer just a menace on Main Street. He was freedom on two wheels. Young men bought jackets. Young women wanted to ride. For the first time, rebellion was fashionable, but real bikers hated it, because that wasn't their story. Hollywood's bikers were clean, stylish, scripted. The real ones were scarred, broke, and haunted. But in a post-war America desperate for drama, truth didn't sell. Image did. Then came Easy Rider in 1969, a counterculture masterpiece drenched in psychedelia and paranoia. Two bikers riding across America, chasing freedom, finding violence instead. It wasn't a gangster film. It was an obituary for the American dream. But once again, Hollywood got it twisted. They painted bikers as prophets, tragic figures with perfect soundtracks and sunsets behind them. The message was poetic, but the impact was commercial. Motorcycles became fashion accessories. Freedom became a marketing slogan. Every time a film romanticized the outlaw, real bikers paid the price. The cops cracked down harder. Towns banned rallies. And the public, the same people who bought movie tickets, started clutching their purses at the sound of a Harley engine. The myth was louder than the men who lived it. By the late 1970s, biker exploitation movies were everywhere. Low-budget thrillers filled with drugs, violence, and bad acting. These films exaggerated the outlaw image to the point of parody. To the audience, bikers were beasts. To the bikers, it was mockery. The irony? The more Hollywood demonized them, the more famous they became. The outlaw biker became a pop icon, a symbol of danger. But behind the logo was a dying truth. Real brotherhoods were being hunted, infiltrated, and misunderstood. The more TV glamorized the chaos, the less the world understood the code. By the time Sons of Anarchy arrived in 2008, the groundwork was already laid. Decades of myth-making had turned the outlaw into a brand. And now, Hollywood wasn't just observing the culture, it was impersonating it. That's when fiction stopped being entertainment and started feeling like theft. Chapter 3. The Rise of Sam Crow. It wasn't born in a garage, it was born in a writer's room. In 2008, FX rolled out a show that would redefine the outlaw biker myth for a new generation. Sons of Anarchy, a violent, poetic fever dream from the mind of Kurt Sutter, promised to show the world what life inside a one-percenter motorcycle club really looked like. And for millions of viewers, it worked. At first glance, it looked authentic. The vests, the bikes, the codes of loyalty, every detail dripped with grit. The main character, Jax Teller, was part philosopher, part gangster, a Hamlet with grease under his fingernails. He wasn't evil, just trapped in the cycle of violence that defined his club, Sam Crow, Sons of Anarchy, Motorcycle Club, Redwood Original. It was brotherhood, crime, and tragedy rolled into 7 seasons of gasoline and gunpowder. But for real bikers watching from the outside, something didn't sit right. To them, Sam Crow wasn't the reflection of outlaw life. It was a soap opera dressed in leather. The club politics, the shootouts, the betrayals, all exaggerated beyond recognition. But it wasn't the fiction that bothered them most. It was how convincing the fiction looked. Because Sons of Anarchy didn't just mimic the outlaw world, it borrowed its soul. Sutter had done his homework. He'd met with real bikers, studied club structures, and even brought in former outlaw consultants to keep things authentic. But authenticity is a dangerous currency in a culture built on secrecy. By pulling back the curtain, even partially, he violated the unspoken rule. You don't put the life on display. Yet the audience couldn't get enough. The show tapped into something primal, America's obsession with rebellion, violence, and loyalty. In a world of cubicles and credit scores, Sam Crow offered something raw, a family bound by blood and asphalt. For the first time, the outlaw biker wasn't just a villain or side character. He was the protagonist, the anti-hero America didn't know it needed. Every episode blurred morality. Good men did bad things for noble reasons, and villains cried over their dead brothers. It was Shakespeare with shotguns. And in that emotional chaos, the line between real outlaw and TV outlaw began to disappear. Fans started dressing like the characters, talking like them, even forming fan clubs that resembled biker chapters. The mythology was no longer underground. It was streaming in high definition. To the entertainment world, it was brilliant storytelling. To real one-percenters, it was identity theft. Because what Sons of Anarchy sold as a TV show was to them a sacred brotherhood, a code earned through years of pain, loyalty, and loss. And now that code was a costume. Sam Crow became a mirror that reflected everything America wanted to believe about outlaws, but not what the outlaws wanted to say about themselves. Chapter 4, Hollywood meets the one-percenters. When Sons of Anarchy first aired, the real one-percenters didn't protest. They just watched. At first, there was curiosity, maybe even a bit of pride. Finally, someone was showing their world on screen. The brotherhood, the rituals, the endless loyalty. But that curiosity didn't last long. Because the deeper the show went, the clearer it became. This wasn't representation, it was revelation. Kurt Sutter and his team didn't just write biker fiction. They recreated elements of real outlaw motorcycle culture. The church meetings, the ranks, the patches, even coded terms known only to members. For a world built on secrecy and silence, that was a betrayal. You don't talk about the club. You don't film the club. You don't pretend to be the club. Quoted by a former Mongols member in a 2014 interview, real one-percenters live by an unspoken constitution, the code of silence. Outsiders aren't supposed to know what happens behind closed clubhouse doors. But suddenly, millions of people did. Every ritual that had taken decades to earn became a plot device. Every symbol, the patch, the reaper, the cut, turned into a costume for people who'd never risked anything for it. And that's what stung the most. Because in biker culture, nothing is free. You earn your patch through loyalty, through proving your worth. It's not merch, it's identity. But Sons of Anarchy turned that identity into a product. Fans started buying Sam Crow cuts, wearing them to rallies and posting pictures online. They weren't bikers, they weren't outlaws, but they wanted to look like it. To real clubs, that wasn't fandom, that was disrespect. Impersonating a patch is one of the biggest taboos in the biker world. It's like wearing a soldier's uniform without serving. People have gotten beaten, even killed, for less. So while Hollywood counted ratings, the streets started simmering. Outlaw clubs began distancing themselves from the show, warning members not to associate with it. Some even banned SOA-themed clothing in clubhouses entirely. Because for them, Sons of Anarchy wasn't entertainment, it was exposure. By bringing real biker codes to television, Sutter had broken an invisible barrier. He didn't just create a fictional club, he blurred the line between the real outlaws and the Hollywood ones. That line matters more than outsiders realize, because in the biker world, perception can get you hurt. A fan wearing the wrong vest in the wrong bar could get mistaken for an enemy, or worse, an informant. The show made that confusion mainstream, and when a culture that lives in the shadows is suddenly dragged into the spotlight, the reaction is never applause. It's anger. To real one-percenters, Sons of Anarchy wasn't a tribute, it was trespassing, and Hollywood had just kicked down the clubhouse door. Chapter 5, Patches, Posers, and Problems. When the engines on Sons of Anarchy revved across TV screens, the sound echoed far beyond Hollywood. It reached the streets, the bars, the rallies, and suddenly everyone wanted to ride like Sam Crow. Within months of the show's rise, a new kind of biker started appearing at motorcycle events. They didn't belong to a club. They didn't follow any code. They were fans, accountants, college kids, weekend warriors, all wearing brand new leather vests with a patch that read Redwood Original. But to real one percenters, those weren't fans. They were posers wearing another man's soul. In the outlaw world, a cut, that sleeveless leather vest, is sacred. It's not just a piece of clothing. It's a passport, a badge, a living history. Every patch on it has meaning. The top rocker, the bottom rocker, the club logo, the territory. Together, they tell the story of who you are and what you've done to earn it. And you don't just wear one, you earn it. To put on a patch you haven't earned is the ultimate disrespect, like wearing military medals from a war you never fought. Yet after Sons of Anarchy, those patches were everywhere. Gas stations, bike nights, even Walmart parking lots. People started calling themselves nomads or originals, not realizing those words weren't decoration, they were titles. Some even made their own fake clubs inspired by the show, complete with rules, logos, and presidents. To outsiders, it looked harmless. To real bikers, it was gasoline on a cultural fire. There are stories, whispered, unverified, but believable, of SOA fans being confronted by real clubs. Some were told to take their cuts off. Others weren't given the chance. Because in that world, pretending to belong can get you hurt. The irony? Sons of Anarchy had made outlaw life too popular. Biker culture used to be underground, feared, mysterious, untouchable. But now it was pop culture, cosplay, Halloween costumes. The outlaw had become an action figure, and real bikers watched their identity being sold one t-shirt at a time. What the show saw as marketing, they saw as mockery. Because when you can buy a lifestyle in a shopping mall, it stops being a lifestyle. It becomes a brand. Clubs that spent decades keeping their secrets locked behind barbed wire now had to deal with tourists wearing knockoff colors. Law enforcement couldn't tell the difference, and that confusion led to problems, real ones. Fans got pulled over, questioned, sometimes even profiled as gang members. Real bikers got lumped in with fans. The line between culture and costume blurred until it nearly disappeared. For outlaw bikers, Sons of Anarchy didn't just misrepresent them, it commercialized them. The patch, once a symbol of brotherhood and sacrifice, was now just another piece of merch. And to men who'd risked everything for that symbol, that wasn't fandom, it was theft. Chapter 6, The Snitch Factor. There's one rule that sits above all others in outlaw biker culture. Silence. You don't talk about the club, you don't explain it, and you never show it. It's a world built on secrecy, because secrecy is survival. The minute outsiders start understanding how things work inside a club, the magic dies and the danger multiplies. That's the code. And Sons of Anarchy broke it. When Kurt Sutter built his fictional brotherhood, he wanted realism. So he reached out to real bikers, guys who'd lived the life, done the time, seen the bodies drop. He wanted their stories, their slang, their mannerisms. He wanted the truth, and he got it. But in doing so, he stepped on a cultural landmine. Because when ex-outlaws started consulting for a TV show, they weren't seen as storytellers. They were seen as snitches. To the outlaw world, helping Hollywood dissect their culture wasn't creativity, it was betrayal. Clubs have been infiltrated by the feds for decades. Informants, undercover agents, wiretaps. The whole history of outlaw motorcycle gangs is littered with rats. And now, the fear wasn't just cops, it was cameras. Every episode of Sons of Anarchy felt like a dramatized confession, revealing rituals that were once sacred, procedures that were never supposed to be known outside church. And whether it was accurate or not didn't matter. The damage was done. They took what we built in blood and turned it into dialogue, said former Hell's Angel off record. Inside real clubs, trust is currency. You lose it, you're finished. And once Sons of Anarchy aired, even longtime members started looking at each other sideways. Who'd been talking to producers? Who'd told them about the ranks, the rules, the slang? A show meant to celebrate brotherhood had accidentally made everyone paranoid. Then came the press junkets, actors sitting on talk shows, breaking down the meaning of the three-piece patch, explaining club politics to morning TV hosts like sacred knowledge was now small talk. To the men who lived that life, it was like hearing your family's secrets read out loud in public. That's when resentment turned to rage. The phrase, rat, carries weight in the outlaw world, the kind of weight that gets people buried. And while no one from the show ever actually snitched to law enforcement, the feeling was the same. They'd aired things that weren't meant to be aired. They'd spoken names that weren't supposed to be spoken. Sutter had tried to write a love letter to the outlaw code, but to the real brotherhood, he'd just turned their silence into spectacle. Because in a world where loyalty is everything, selling your secrets, even to a TV show, feels like treason. And for the 1%ers watching from the shadows, Sons of Anarchy wasn't art, it was evidence. Chapter 7, From Brotherhood to Bloodshed. For all its talk about loyalty and brotherhood, Sons of Anarchy thrived on one thing: violence. Every episode promised another body, a beating, a shootout, a betrayal. Death became the engine that kept the show running. But that's where Hollywood's fantasy crashed head-on with reality. Because in the real outlaw world, violence isn't the point. It's the last resort. To the public, Sons of Anarchy made it look like every biker club was a battlefield. Bullets flying daily, presidents turning on their brothers, cops dying in alleys. But to actual 1%ers, it was laughable and dangerous. Outlaw clubs don't survive decades by acting like psychopaths. They survive through structure, patience, and silence. Every decision, every act of retribution is calculated, never chaos. The patch isn't a license to kill, it's a warning. We don't start problems, but we finish them. The show turned that discipline into drama. Sam Crow's world was constant carnage, drive-bys, double crosses, endless revenge loops. It looked cinematic, sure, but it also reinforced every stereotype law enforcement already believed, that bikers were armed gangs with no conscience. And that misunderstanding came with consequences. During the show's run, federal agencies ramped up operations against real motorcycle clubs. The ATF and FBI released new reports painting the Hells Angels, Mongols, and Bandidos as domestic terror threats. Agents didn't say Sons of Anarchy by name, but they didn't have to. The image was already burned into America's mind. Hollywood's body count became ammunition for the feds. The irony? Many outlaw bikers are veterans, family men, business owners. They raise money for kids' hospitals, run charity rides, and still get profiled as killers because the public thinks every biker is a Jax Teller with a death wish. That's the power and dangers of storytelling. When a show blurs fact and fiction, the fallout doesn't stay on screen. Even inside the clubs, the influence spread. Younger members started mimicking the show, quoting lines, acting tough, dressing like Sam Crow. Old-timers called them Hollywood bikers. The code of quiet loyalty was being replaced with TV swagger. And that's what broke the veterans' hearts. Because before Sons of Anarchy, being an outlaw meant something sacred: discipline, unity, control. After it, too many outsiders thought it meant chaos, bullets, and broken oaths. The brotherhood wasn't about violence, it was about balance. Keeping the world at arm's length while protecting your own. But when the show turned every decision into a murder scene, it rewrote that identity in blood. To fans, it was gripping television. To bikers, it was character assassination. Because when Hollywood makes every outlaw a killer, the world stopped seeing brotherhood and started seeing targets. Chapter 8, Heat from the Feds. While Sons of Anarchy dominated primetime, something else was happening in the real world, a silent war. Behind the roar of Harley engines and Netflix binges, law enforcement was paying attention. Because to the feds, fiction wasn't entertainment, it was evidence. Every episode that showed Sam Crow moving guns, running drugs, or executing rivals was like a free commercial for criminal suspicion. To the average viewer, it was cool. To the FBI, it was confirmation. And in the years Sons of Anarchy aired, the government ramped up some of the biggest operations against outlaw motorcycle clubs in modern history. The Mongols were hit first, their members arrested in coordinated raids, their club logo seized as criminal property. The Bandidos, the Outlaws, and the Hells Angels all felt the same pressure. More surveillance, more arrests, more federal attention. Now let's be clear, the heat was building long before the show existed, but Sons of Anarchy poured gasoline on that fire. The public's imagination had been captured by the myth of the violent biker gang, and that myth made it easy for the government to justify bigger budgets, larger task forces, and more aggressive raids. Because the headlines didn't read fictional TV club goes rogue. They read federal agencies target violent biker syndicates. The line between story and strategy was gone. Inside the real clubs, paranoia skyrocketed. Was that new guy in the clubhouse a recruit or an undercover? Were the cameras outside a news crew or the DEA? Clubs that once operated in shadows now had spotlights on them, fueled by TV ratings and media hype. The outlaw mystique that once protected them now painted bullseyes on their backs. And the saddest part? Many of the bikers under investigation weren't hardened criminals. They were mechanics, veterans, truck drivers. But to the public, and to the feds, they all looked like Sam Crow. The Sons of Anarchy effect blurred public perception so deeply that law enforcement started quoting the show in real trials. Prosecutors used the series as cultural context, proof that the public already knew how these clubs operated. Imagine that, a scripted FX drama influencing real criminal cases. That's the power of image. Once the narrative escapes its creator, it starts writing its own consequences. For outlaw bikers, Sons of Anarchy didn't just steal their image, it gave their enemies a new playbook. A dramatized, exaggerated version of their life became the new definition of guilt by association. The show had blurred the lines so well that the world stopped asking what was real. And when that happens, truth doesn't matter, only perception does. Chapter 9, When Hollywood Stole the Outlaw Code. Every culture has its code, a set of rules that defines who belongs and who doesn't. For outlaw bikers, that code was sacred. It wasn't written down, but it lived in the way they rode, the way they fought, the way they kept outsiders out. Then Hollywood found it and turned it into merchandise. By its final seasons, Sons of Anarchy wasn't just a TV show, it was a full-blown industry. T-shirts, hoodies, replica patches, Reaper decals, and official SAMCRO merchandise lined up in stores across America. The outlaw image, once feared, was now fashionable. People who'd never ridden a motorcycle in their lives were dressing like outlaws, quoting Jax Teller, buying leather cuts stitched in China. The same society that once called bikers criminals was now buying their costumes for Halloween. To real one-percenters, it was a slap in the face because their code was never meant to be sold. The outlaw way of life was supposed to be earned through loyalty, sacrifice, and pain, not purchased through an FX web store. But that's exactly what happened. Sons of Anarchy took the brotherhood, the discipline, the danger, and packaged it as rebellion for the masses. And rebellion sells. Hollywood had done it before. They turned gangsters into pop icons with Scarface. They turned drug lords into anti-heroes with Breaking Bad and Narcos. And now, they turned bikers, men who lived and died by an unspoken code, into entertainment mascots. The world didn't want the truth of outlaw life. The quiet loyalty, the structure, the scars. It wanted the aesthetic, the guns, the grimaces, the leather, and the myth. That's how rebellion became another American product. To the culture that built it, this wasn't evolution, it was theft. Because the outlaw code wasn't about chaos or ego. It was about freedom, earned 1 mile at a time. And freedom, by definition, can't be franchised. But that's exactly what Hollywood did. They franchised the feeling. They took the grit and made it glossy. They took the brotherhood and made it bingeable. And somewhere in between all the merch and the montages, the meaning disappeared. The outlaw identity, once built on silence, had been turned into a slogan. Ride free, printed in bulk, sold in malls. To real bikers, it wasn't just cultural theft, it was spiritual. They'd built something sacred in the margins of America, and now the same system that once hunted them was cashing in on their mystique. That's the irony of fame. It kills what made you famous. And when Sons of Anarchy became a global brand, the outlaw brotherhood stopped being feared and started being fiction. Chapter 10. The Price of Fame. Every story about fame ends the same way, with a cost. And for the outlaw biker world, Sons of Anarchy was that cost. When the final credits rolled in 2014, millions of fans mourned Jax Teller like he was a fallen folk hero. But in the real biker world, there was no funeral, just fatigue. Because the culture they'd protected for decades was gone. It wasn't taken by cops or rivals or time. It was taken by exposure. The show had done what no federal task force ever could. It made the outlaw lifestyle mainstream. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be a rebel. Middle-class dads with weekend Harleys started calling themselves one-percenters. College kids quoted Jax about brotherhood and betrayal like scripture. And the same society that used to fear bikers now wore their image like a fashion statement. For real clubs, that was the end of an era. They couldn't tell who was a true rider and who was an imposter. They couldn't meet in peace without cameras hovering or journalists asking for the real story. Even their symbols, when once feared and respected, had been reduced to pop culture props. That's the dark side of visibility. Once you become entertainment, you lose your mystery, and mystery was everything. The brotherhood had always thrived in the shadows, unspoken oaths, secret hierarchies, unbreakable trust. But Sons of Anarchy dragged that into the spotlight. And once something sacred is seen by the masses, it stops being sacred. Some bikers tried to reclaim it, others just let it go. A few even admitted they liked the show. They saw parts of themselves in Jax, the same inner conflict between loyalty and freedom. But the difference was this. For them, the stakes were real. When they rode, it wasn't for a camera, it was for survival. Hollywood had turned rebellion into content. But rebellion, real rebellion, doesn't want attention. It wants escape. That's what the world never understood. Biker culture wasn't built to impress. It was built to disappear. And that's why so many old school riders still hate Sons of Anarchy. Not because it was inaccurate, but because it was too convincing. It gave people the illusion they understood the life without living any of it. The show made the outlaw lifestyle look cinematic, but in reality, it's lonely, dangerous, unforgiving, a life where brotherhood means everything and fame means death. The real outlaws didn't need TV to tell their story. Their story was already written, in scars, in silence, in the miles they left behind. And as the engines fade and the cameras stop rolling, one truth remains. Hollywood may have immortalized the outlaw, but in doing so, it killed the myth that made him real. When Sons of Anarchy ended, it left behind more than a fan base. It left a fracture. For 7 seasons, millions watched a story about loyalty, pain, and freedom. But for the men who actually lived that life, it wasn't a story. It was sacred. And that's the thing about Hollywood. It can show you the leather, the bikes, the blood, but it can never show you the soul. In the end, The world got what it wanted: a hero with a cut, a gun, and a quote about freedom. But the real brotherhood, the one that never asked for cameras, got left behind, buried under merchandise and myths, because fame doesn't immortalize truth. It distorts it. Outlaw life was never about being seen. It was about belonging, about finding a family on the edge of a world that didn't want you. And maybe that's the part the show could never script. The quiet, unglamorous loyalty that doesn't need an audience. So when you see a man on a Harley wearing a cut that isn't for sale, remember, he's not chasing fame, he's protecting a code. Because in the real outlaw world, you don't ride for attention, you ride to be free.